Hey everyone, welcome back. Another episode of Daily Footy, another sports with me, Taz, and of course Sean. Uh, you're probably all grateful. He's found a way to keep his camera still, and he's not the only thing moving around will be him. Um,
Yeah.
we've got a
No
couple of things that.
intrusions.
Hmm?
No intrusions this time from either side.
Well, fingers crossed. Yeah. We've got a few things we want to talk about. Obviously, we mentioned at the end of the last episode that we were going to talk about transfers a little bit more in depth because we had to sort of rush it towards the end. We got really going in our conversation, and of course we want to talk about other sports because obviously it's in our name for starters. But there are different scenarios going on in different sports that you'd automatically just assume everything's been stopped, but that isn't quite the case, and certain things have been delayed or stopped at very varying times. But what we will do to kick off is recently we've been hearing about obviously a lot of lower league sides and even non-league sides are being forced to disband potentially or sack staff or temporarily, lay them off because they just can't physically cope with the what's going on right now. They can't. Yeah, exactly. They just don't have the funds, sadly, to do anything about it. We are getting news that some players and some clubs are trying to assist with this. What have you heard about it all so far, and what are your thoughts?
So it's a very good topic that to raise because a lot of people focus on the Premiership clubs or maybe some of the elite Championship teams, but there's a football life other than these teams. Even the fact that non-league football sides had to play a week furthermore, even though the Premiership teams had to cancel. This could be considered due to a financial situation, financial need to have money. We've seen a team called Barnet, I believe it was Barnet, who actually have to sack even their manager because their parachute payments from being in the Football League previously is going to finish by April, and they won't be able to help afford any of their non-playing staff. And it doesn't only it's not only affecting the English game. Obviously, this global pandemic, it's affecting, for example, in Switzerland, a team called FC Sion, they had to release all of their players that had their contracts finishing by June. A club that's already had issues, including some big players. One player that played in England, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, and Doumbia, actually, he's another one. Doumbia, Ivorian coast. He played for Russia. Yeah,
Is it that one?
yeah, and he's actually been a number of players released, and because the team has FC Sion has released the players, they're considering legal actions. The one thing I always wonder, who are we? Okay, the government's saying they're going to support every club and every team in this financial situation. If that's the case, then why is every team so worried about owing someone something? Even the Gillingham issue, I'll let you go on about the Gillingham owner's situation because that's a conversation we spoke about after our recording yesterday, and I know you want to elaborate your opinions onto that.
I mean, what do you mean when you say owing someone? Firstly,
Like who? I know this is your background in accountancy, but if we've got a possibility of owing someone growing debts, is there a way where we can perhaps freeze these debts for a temporary short amount of time?
um, it's a very difficult one to answer, really. I mean, personally, I think most places are just basically halted proceedings. Um, like I know certain people are going through a process of trying to find jobs, for example, and they can't. They've either had to have their applications postponed or cancelled or delayed. But I also know that there are some people who are trying to use methods of trying to work around it and try to get them set up remotely. That isn't possible for everyone. For example, if you're in a client-facing kind of role. You know, if you're providing a service for someone, you're working in a shop or something like that, well, you can't really work from home in that scenario. You know, if you're a sales assistant in Next, for example, you just can't. You know, you can't work from home because you know it's not in your remit. So what are you forced to do? You're basically forced to either, I don't know, be paid less or something, or indeed be let go at least for a while. Um, I would think the same applies for, you know, things like debt, because when was the last time we had something like this happen?
Exactly, and it's just piling up on these teams. There are some teams like you're going to go on about it. I'll let you fully talk about the initiative from a certain legend of your club, but we've seen talk about another legend, Roman Abramovich. Joking, but Chelsea are doing a nice initiative with their hotels, but even Borussia Mönchengladbach, I read on Goal.com. A lot of people don't like that site, but I love it. Goal.com has said that Borussia Mönchengladbach are going to half the wages of their playing staff to help support the non-playing staff. Because a key factor is that a lot of these clubs are no longer getting their revenue of TV money, the TV broadcasting money, income from the ticket sales and things like that. So they've been forced to reduce the wages of their players in order to help support the non-playing staff. So it shows how much of a significant impact it has. I'm just curious why, and it's me not having a background in the routine of finances, but who does this money ultimately go to? Does it go to the government or to other companies that have control? That's what I'm always been curious about. But I'll let you go on about your legend.
Do you know what? It's so hard to actually even answer that, because ultimately, when you think about a transfer, for example, we all sort of feel as though we understand what the logistics are, what the little extra details are. We all feel like we understand what the true transfer fee was, what the weekly salary rate is. Do we actually truly know? I mean, you know, most of them don't really sort of, you know, go, this guy's on 150,000 a week. This guy, you know, they paid exactly this amount to pay for him. You know, I mean, just look at the Bruno Fernandes deal, for example. I mean, it's got add-ons, and you know, we don't truly understand exactly what the exact final figure is. You know, and it's just same sort of thing like that, really. I mean, you don't. It's really hard, even for me, to sort of say, well, I think I understand and I think I know when people are going to be expecting payments to be made, but it's just it's difficult, really, that one. I mean, all I can do is sort of say, well, if you're in a good position, if you're in a higher league, sounds like a plea, you know, try and help out teams below you. I think most of the Premiership and maybe half of the Championship perhaps are in decent positions. You know, some of them have got very rich owners. It's probably right now that those owners really need to cough up and really kind of make a difference. And you know, of course, let's talk about the late great Vichai from, you know, who was obviously the owner of Leicester before his tragic accident. He absolutely endeared himself to the Leicester, you know, to the city. You don't have to do it. You don't have to sort of pretend like you know, you like them because you own them. But you know, he actually did really good things, really nice things, because he wanted to, and therefore, you know, just wasn't a fan base for the players, but it was a really, really, really strong love and admiration from the fans towards him and his family as well, for what they were doing for the club and indeed what they were doing for the community. You don't actually get that many owners that are like that. I mean, I remember when Wigan got to the FA Cup final and beat Man City in the final. All I could hear was, you know, the love and how much Dave Whelan was adored by the fan base, and you know, you can only hope for ownership like that. And you know, and this is coming from a guy who's you know, who supports a club that atrociously run. So I know firsthand exactly what it's like, supporting a club like that. But it's
Steve,
really important in times like now that you
Steve Gibson. Why aren't you mentioning Steve Gibson? He's one of the greatest owners. He's exactly what you just defined. A great owner that serves the club, gives the club as much or his breath and his soul.
Well, I didn't
So
hear. Wait, what was the name? Sorry.
Steve Gibson, Middlesbrough's chairman.
Oh, sure. Moving on. Oh yeah, hey, you know more about Steve Gibson than I do. Um, hey, I have more admiration and respect for an owner that sticks by a club because he wants to be there and because he loves the club for the club. And how long has he been there? Has he been there throughout your lifetime?
Yeah, so Middlesbrough well, I may need to be corrected, but we nearly were in administration at 1986, I believe it was.
Okay.
And then he came as a local businessman, helped rejuvenate the club. And this is why 20 years later, we got into the Europa League final. And it was just the journey being there from a team that was nearly going bankruptcy, an owner that stuck through the clubs, always giving his money as much as he can, a club that just won promotion and got Ravanelli, that was part of a winning European Champions League side. A junior player from Brazil. It's amazing. That's another reason why I fell in love with Middlesbrough when I was just hopping from all clubs at a young age.
It's a shame that those two are the only good players you've ever had. But I'm sure there are a few other names. I'm just winding you up. But no, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, it makes it easier for fans to sort of keep faith that if the owner sort of removes somebody from a post, it's because you'd hope at least that they're generally doing it for the well-being of the club. And they don't really question it quite as much, But there are a lot of money hungry, power hungry owners who are just obsessed with one thing, and consequently they're not doing the right things. They're not doing things for the right reasons, and it ruins the game. It tarnishes the game somewhat.
We've got
Um,
another question for you then.
go
So well, after our release of our first video, we had a thank you guys for watching. I have to give a shout out to Tyler, who's been commenting on our two videos. One, I've been speaking to some football fans that may be a bit shy in communicating right now in our group and our YouTube comment page. And one is a Sheffield Wednesday fan
Okay.
who he was talking about, he doesn't, we're talking about this very topic where he says he likes the idea what the Gillingham owner has suggested that players, I mean that these clubs should have a little, even 2.5 million pounds per club given to each club to help them stay afloat. Because Paul Merson did highlight that if he summed out, it's about 40 million for two League One and League Two teams around that and that position. 40 million pounds doesn't get you barely an average player. My goodness, you guys spend 80 million pounds on an average defender. I'm joking, but
Whoa.
it shows how
Deep
much a
shots.
club can support someone. And he's also said something interesting because I'm going to shift away from the owners quickly because they are an issue, but the FA. He hates this idea of the parachute payments, that teams that are relegated are awarded an inflated amount of money compared to their rivals. And furthermore, this can also be linked to our
When
conversation
you
we
say
had
they're
yesterday.
rivals, when you say they're rivals, do you mean the guys coming up? You mean to take their place?
Oh, sorry, the teams in the league. So when a team gets
In the Premier
relegated,
League, but are staying up, but just barely staying up.
oh no, so when a team gets relegated, they get
They
parachute
get pushed.
payments. That
Mm.
so Middlesbrough, we had 2 seasons worth of parachute payments, and we were able to spend more money than other clubs. We just had bad recruitment. However, it's seen that it's not a fair level playing ground compared to other championship clubs that have to oblige with strict rulings. QPR had points docked. Birmingham had points docked. So it's unfair when you see teams like Middlesbrough having that leverage. And furthermore, the reason why I want to go back to a conversation we had 2 days ago is, or maybe yesterday, we spoke about the contingency plan of perhaps having 5 teams, additional teams, eventually getting relegated from the next season. So we remember when we spoke about one of the plans that Leeds and West Brom could earn promotion and no teams would be relegated. The Sheffield Wednesday fan suggested that it would be very unfair that if 5 clubs were to get relegated to the Championship, and all those 5 clubs will be entitled to parachute payments. So that causes further controversy that more clubs would be at a financial playing field, unfair playing field. And it'd be basically 5-man cities, which I know you despise.
Well, I mean, parachute payments are interesting. Certainly mixed feelings. I mean, because I get it to an extent, and I also get the arguments against it, because I mean, obviously, when you go up to the Premiership, you want to do everything you can, and you obviously get a massive payday. That's what do they call it? The what do they call the playoff final? I can't remember what they call it, but in effect, it's you may as well call it the £1 million game or something.
Yeah.
But it's a huge game, because you're obviously getting massive amount of money if you win it. But consequently, teams have to spend, to try staying afloat and staying up in the league. The problem is, way too many of these teams overdo it, and what you're losing is you're actually losing the core players, or the players that you still have, but they're not playing as much because, they're the ones that were hungry enough to get you there. They'll be the ones hungry enough to keep you there. You just need a couple of extra additions and not go too far. I think that's what a lot of teams are struggling to do. I actually don't think Sheffield United did too much in the way of transfers last summer, and it kind of shows. They don't really have a strike force, mind you, but everyone around the team is chipping in, and that's crucial. It's a example, the perfect example of a team working together, man for man. But obviously,
I definitely agree with you, but you got to look at, then, to support and to go against your point, Aston Villa, Norwich, ironically, they didn't make many signings, but from January, the transfer window, because of the Jurgen Klinsmann situation at was it Hamburg he was at? Oh, no, I know you're a Hamburg fan, sorry. So whichever club he was at, where he had fallen out with a Brazilian-German player that then joined Norwich. A few signings Norwich has done, ironically, has helped improve the quality, but Norwich keeping their core base of players from the Championship has actually affected them and ensured relegation, basically. While Aston Villa, a side that's just revamped their whole squad, are also facing relegation because, as you rightly say, you've got to respect the players that got you there in the first place. Otherwise, it's like the argument we said about it takes away the value of the season if you don't finish a season, or it takes away the value of that club's achievements if you just take away the players that earned you that position in the first place.
Oh yeah, I mean, what you've just done there is you've basically given both the what's the word I'm looking for? One, the height, the kind of over the top extreme, and the not enough version. You've got Villa, who've bought an awful lot. You've got Norwich, who've maybe not bought enough, and you've got sounds like Goldilocks, doesn't it? And you've got Sheffield United, who've bought a few players, but they, I think, maybe just bought the right way, what they needed in particular, and I think for that reason, that's another reason they've been doing so well. I mean, it's an absolute credit to them. How they've played has far exceeded most people's expectations. I mean, I thought Villa was going to be the one that comfortably stays up because of their history with the league, and even in Europe as well, that they'd get back to the Premier League and they'd want to cling on for dear life. Well, they might still cling on for dear life, but they're in a really difficult position, and also to follow up with your parachute question as well. That's also, especially with Villa, that's a reason why that parachute's probably in place, whether I agree with it or not. you buy more players and sometimes more expensive players when you get promoted, and consequently you're having to cough up more. And oh, hello, where's he gone?
Oh, sorry, I just had to close the door and nearly had an intrusion.
And you know, you've got to deal with the salary caps. Somebody you might paid about 30 grand for or something per week in the championship, suddenly you're in the Premiership and you probably have to pay 60 or 80 or something instead, and that's not a salary cap that you can handle. So you're forced, if you get relegated straight away, to either sell your big players or suffer potential consequences of that.
I'll give you a good example. Then Middlesbrough, if you don't want to, actually not Middlesbrough, but if you get relegated and there's no parachute payments, you're going to be more prone of selling the players and making your team even weaker in that season. Like we were able to hold on to Adama Traore for at least 3 months, and it helped us. But because of if there was no parachute payments, we would lose more players and we would have been even weaker. So there's definitely pros and cons. I'll tell you something else interesting. We're talking about how good Sheffield United were. Sheffield United didn't even win the championship last season. Norwich did. That's interesting. Also, Aston Villa, talking about how they would be so determined to remain in the Premiership. They failed against Fulham in the playoff season, the season before. So then to defeat Derby, it shows that they had the willingness and desire to try to make it into the league. So therefore, as you said, there's so many factors that plays a role, and you can even talk. We can talk about this later, probably even tomorrow. It's a brilliant. I don't like Tony Pulis for what he did to Middlesbrough. He's better than Woodgate, by the way, but he gave a brilliant review of how recruitment happens. And I think we can leave that to another conversation because I can go on for hours and hours. And you've got a lot of other topics you'd like to go on to today.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly recruitment is a brilliant topic for us. I mean, we're going to talk a bit about transfers as well today, but recruitment and how a team works, I think that's a brilliant thing for us to discuss in detail. We could even have a whole video on that, to be honest with you. There's just so many elements to it as well. But I just think, with regards to what's maybe going on with some of these guys that have come up, it is amazing actually how many times a team that wins the championship actually is, I think generally speaking, a lot of the time recently they've actually been the lowest, and some of them have actually just gone straight back down again, and they've been the lowest team that have gone down. And it's usually, more often than not, it's the team that goes through the playoffs that's almost had to just work their socks off to get to where they were, that have actually stayed up. It's a little bit different this time around with Sheffield United. I would have thought it would have been Villa that was doing what Sheffield United were doing, not to that extent, but would be doing something similar. But it's been Sheffield United. It's an absolute credit to them, I think, for doing that. Right, we need to move on. I didn't think we managed to be able to discuss that as long as we did, but we go on and on and on sometimes. Exactly. I was going to discuss transfers next. However, I think we have obviously, our channel name says we're going to discuss other sports, and I think what we'll do is we'll discuss other sports first, and discuss transfers a little bit should we have time at the end. We have got plenty of time to discuss transfers, so there's no rush with that. So I mean, first and foremost, I mean, there's been a real mixture of responses to the virus around the world in relation to a number of sports. Some sports are actually still going ahead, I believe. I think in Australia, the Aussie Rules football is going on.
Oh, really?
I believe so.
Oh, yes, you're right. Yeah, I heard about that. Yeah.
I don't think they're having the crowds in there. I hope not. But yeah, they seem adamant that they wanna carry on with that. and of course you've just done a W, which for those of you that don't know what he's talking about, he's referring to WWE and his beloved wrestling. Yep. That's going to lose us a lot of views. Thank you for that. Yeah, all right, stuff. But no, I mean, it was actually only in the last couple of days, I think, actually, that WWE and the more recent brand AEW, and even TNA, I think, that have actually sort of closed the doors to the public. What are your thoughts on A, why it took them so long to do that, and B, what are your thoughts on them continuing to actually sort of provide a service still? I mean, I personally would have stopped it, because I bet you anything, if somebody within the WWE or AEW community, in the roster, picks up the virus, they're probably going to shut it down straight away. So why do you think they're taking this risk to begin with?
So this is a very okay. I can actually talk longer about wrestling and football. I love football more, but I'm going to first go a bit off on a tangent. You can understand Vince McMahon because he's a money-greeding demon, but Cody Rhodes and the Khan Jr. For them, I don't understand why AEW has to continue. I know they've got TV commitments, but you can understand Vince McMahon's a demon who uses his employees as cattle. He doesn't really care about his wrestlers, just wants to make the most out of it. He's got an ego where he has to defeat everything. This is the reason why he brought back XFL, although that got postponed. So he wants to show that he is undefeated against anything, including the coronavirus. Some people are claiming there's an insurance scam where he wants to make sure that he continues to have WrestleMania in order to sustain his financial stability of the product, where it's also could be seen as genius because WrestleMania is the show of shows for wrestling, and it's going to ensure that no one else is going to be delivering a sports entertainment product on the weekend, because that's another topic we need to talk about. WrestleMania is now a 2-day weekend event, unprecedented. That's going to make people want to watch.
Hall of Fame as well, isn't it?
Yeah. I think Hall of Fame cancelled. Hall of Fame, NXT.
That's to be expected, because the whole point of Hall of Fame is it's an appreciation, it's a celebration of certain now retired, I think, or sadly passed away wrestlers, and not always wrestlers, is it? But
we had Troy Wilson. Yes, that's not a wrestler.
Yeah, well, I mean, Snoop Dogg's technically a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's not necessarily, you can't have an appreciation of somebody unless there are people there.
Not too close though. We had the situation with Bret Hart last year where an idiot fan just came in and tried to just tag him in the tally down. Dash Wilder knocked him out, and also Ronda Rousey's husband. I know he's Trevor. He's a big UFC fighter, but we know him as Ronda Rousey's hubby. They all knocked the fan out, gave the fan a good beating, and that's just showing that we have to give appreciation to these legends, but probably not too close.
Yeah, I'd like to also say to everyone, Sean is not trying to encourage violence. But
you to someone
but he's basically just trying to say, as fans, we need to stay within the limits. Which is funny, because I mean, it's exactly what a lot of fans weren't doing, when they were sort of congregating outside some of these closed door matches. It's what they were trying to discourage, and the only way to discourage that, sadly, is to completely stop play, because they've got nowhere to go or nowhere to watch anything in pubs or anything like that either. Yeah, I mean, all right. Well, you discussed that Vince McMahon element. I mean, what are your thoughts on them continuing? I mean, because AEW is doing it as well. I think TNA are doing it as well. Well, they call themselves Impact now, don't they? What are your thoughts on that? Why do you think they're still doing it? I mean, they've probably got their own big events. I know TNA or Impact, whatever you call it, they probably prioritize Slammiversary and most importantly Bound for Glory at the end towards the end of the year.
But like
It's
Bound for Glory October,
yeah,
May around Slammiversary or May. But the thing what I don't like about, I'm being extra harsh on Cody because maybe I'm sometimes go. The thing about Cody is that he is seen as the alternative, the good person that wants to look after wrestlers, to do what's right for wrestling. That's his image. That they want to do less scripts and more natural instincts. So therefore, to then put these wrestlers, it's still, it may be in their own version of the performance center. However, you're still putting people at risks. Chris Jericho came into the arena with one of his members of his group singing. So it just shows a lot of these wrestlers are traveling from their homes to this venue, and it's still risky. Even AEW actually had one of the biggest shows in their history this week because they had two debutants from ex-WWE wrestlers who are both fantastic. I particularly like Brody. I'm a big fan of Luke Harper, and I just think they should have perhaps done the right delaying it. They just delay it because every other sports is doing it. Vince McMahon is a tyrant. There's no way of going around it. CM Punk's my guy, and he is right to say Vince McMahon is a tyrant. Cody could have delayed it. Wrestling is about entertainment at the end of the day. You entertain for the fans. You need that fan element, and that's going to make WrestleMania look really weird. Seeing an old Goldberg is scary. We've all seen him. I've seen him in person, but I don't think he's going to have as much of an impact when he's in an empty arena.
Yeah, I mean, I think do you know, weirdly enough, although I felt like they should have postponed proceedings anyway on, well, most sports in general, a bit disappointed that AEW didn't do it before this week, partly because, I mean, you know, whatever he's calling himself, Brody Lee, Luke Harper, you know, he's the head of the Dark Order, I think they're called. And they, you know, it's like this build up, and you're thinking, who the heck is the leader? Who the heck's the leader? And similarly, and then it happens, but in front of nobody. And you know, I would have just sort of kept on having, if they were going to continue, just keep having, you know, your standard matches and stuff like that. And even with Matt Hardy, keep having standard matches, and then when you've got a crowd again, then you bring those two out, and then just have the appeal. You know, you want that fan reaction. You want the gasp from the crowd when they, you know, the look of horror or shock when they see Luke Harper, aka Brody Lee, turn up, and the look of sheer delight and shock when they see Matt Hardy just standing on the balcony. You know, and you, from a fan's perspective, you lose the entertainment. And the fact of the matter is, you know, WWE actually has changed its name, and the E stands for entertainment now. And you can't entertain people if they're not there. So from a kind of fan perspective, I don't feel they should be doing it anyway. And from a humane perspective, you just shouldn't be taking the risk, because you know they're going to stop it if somebody gets it. And you know, you shouldn't be playing with the world like that. So,
but the one that you say though, it's WWE wrestling itself. We all love wrestling. It's going to be one.
Not everyone.
Well, it's a humongous opportunity for a brilliant sport to finally have the opportunity of getting higher ratings, because you see a lot of current wrestlers, they're actually more athletically gifted than the wrestlers of the Attitude Era, but nostalgia means we prefer the Attitude Era. These wrestlers may now finally get the exposure that they deserve. People like Seth Rollins, AJ Styles, perhaps the two greatest wrestlers of this generation, ignoring CM Punk. I love CM Punk more, but those two are so talented. And people just continuously say, "Oh, it's this guy at NJPW. It was Omega. It was now. It could be so many other alternative wrestlers that they prefer over these the WWE superstars. Now these guys can have all the way the fan negativity, internet fan negativity, have the opportunity to show to the bigger, wider public that these guys are actually really talented. These WWE superstars are the future of wrestling, and wrestling is not a dead sport. Entertainment.
Yeah, I mean, firstly, I'm glad you corrected yourself because I wouldn't call it sport. I'd call it entertainment. Um, it's basically acting with violence, really, isn't it? Um, but
I'm the one about. I can even defend that
no,
argument because
no,
it's
let's let's
predetermined,
let's
not
not
fake, not fake.
let's not. Um, okay, I mean we've talked a little bit on a bit about wrestling, and obviously we can obviously discuss that in detail again, of course. But there are other sports going on, and I think was it yesterday's video or the day before. I obviously gave a little hint away to people that I'm a big snooker fan, and I was hoping to go to the World Championships. And today it was reported, as it happens, that um, the World Championships have indeed been postponed as expected, as rightly so. Um, Even if things start clearing up is not fixed. Clearing up is not eradicated or removed, or you know, we're in the clear. It just means you're heading in the right direction. So the last thing you should be doing is causing a potential new issue by continuing with something, even if it's something as massive and major as the World Championship. So I believe it's now been postponed at least until July or August. I'm obviously going to have to sort of wait and see what's going on, partly with my ticket. Do I need to call in and ask for updated ticket? Will my ticket that I've got right now suffice? Um, and of course, I've got to cancel my hotels, I suspect. Thankfully, for the record, for anyone that's worried, not that anyone cares, but if they were worried about me, I've only reserved my hotel. So because I didn't plan for this, but I always like to reserve it just in case you've got a change of plan or change of days that you want to spend there. So that part's fortunate for me, I guess. But yeah, it is disappointing that that's happening. But um, what would you do? I mean, you've missed all these other tournaments. You've got a lot of players that have probably been trying to gain ranking points, for example, to make it to the World Championships. Um, Even if they had it in July or August, would you still have the World Champs, or would you do what some people have proposed in that second option I gave you yesterday in the football scenario, where you just sort of leave it there for the season?
So I think it could be seen as like the Premiership season we're talking about in football. We have to take it by day or week by week procedure where it's an honor to even make it to be able to perform at the World Championships. And we want to make sure that the sports stars, snookers, it's not an easy sport. I'm not good at snooker, so I understand how difficult it can be to even reach that opportunity. These guys should have the rights to have the chance to perform, but at the same time, they're not in the right mental mindset, because it's more of not just a physical game, it's a very difficult mental game that you need to know when you need to plan, be very strategic, how you're going to approach it, how you're going to hit which board, the positions of the ricocheting and all this stuff. You can go on and on about it. This is your sport, your field. So to put someone to rush them is not good, but to make sure that we have to make sure that it's contained to a greater state, this whole coronavirus, in order to make these performers more relaxed. And then, as you spoke about 2 days ago, the fans themselves. We need the fans themselves to be more relaxed in order to be able to be congregated around each other. Because at the end of the day, even these performers aren't going to be so close to each other. The fans are, such as yourself. You're going to be next to 90. You did say 98% people you wouldn't know, but probably by July, it'll probably be only 2% if this video continues, that everyone will know us. So, but but seriously, you'd be around people you do not know if they are infected or not, and the fans themselves will be more prone than even the performers. So that's a very good point that you raised yesterday, and it's good that it's been delayed. I think it's unfair on the sports stars if it was cancelled. I think every sport should have the chance to come to a finale conclusion in order to determine who was worthy of attaining what would what we're all here for in the first place, to see a winner, a loser. Nobody's losers anyway, but it's just being part of the sport. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I mean, what I would say, although it has its slight similarity to the football to an extent, what's different about snooker is there are so many tournaments across the year. They're not just you're picking up points as you would in the Premier League, but they're all individual tournaments. So you're playing for individual trophies and things like that. So that's why you basically just start fresh when you get to the World Championships. The sad part is if somebody who's been making some decent progress as a very, very low ranked or unranked player or something like that, and they've been getting loads of points to give them possibility to play in the qualifiers, for example, they may not have the opportunity to do so in the coming months because of the number of tournaments that have been cancelled. But we sadly have to sort of accept that the pinnacle of the sport is the Worlds, and that's probably the one thing that should be prioritized, if anything. I know there are going to be people that disagree with that, because obviously if you're in a city or town where you don't get much sport coming your way or something like that, and this is the one sport or the one occasion that you look forward to on the sporting calendar, and you don't get to see it because of what's going on, then I appreciate that that's not fair or easy. But I'm sure, I'd hope they'd agree that the World Championships, the World Cups, and the Euros for football as well, the Olympics and things like that, the pinnacle of each of these sports, are what you'd prioritize the most, what you'd want to win the most, and things like that. So I would say, I wouldn't be against them delaying it, especially as because I think the snooker season restarts. I think it restarts in July, actually, in Australia. Yeah. So
Okay.
But I mean, I can't remember where. I think it's the Gold Coast. Maybe I'm being silly, but
Maybe.
I would say maybe if you can have the World Champs, and then sadly have to skip some events on the calendar just this upcoming year, and then resume the calendar when you truly feel it's safe to do so, because obviously players need time to recover, time to rest and stuff like that. You could argue, of course, that given the time off that they're getting right now, in terms of practice, it's not the most strenuous of sports to practice, because it's really mental. You can practice your shots, but you can stop, and then you can just relax. That's the nature of the game, really. Whereas with football, if you're training, you kind of want to do an intensive workout and things like that. It's more relevant to you. Each sport has their own situation and preparation and training regime. So perhaps they could argue that they could have a quick turnaround because it's a weekly tournament all the time. But yeah, I mean, I think that's why I was keen to bring up snooker, because it was one of the few sports that actually carried on with behind closed doors, so to speak. And funnily enough, it's one of the few sports that even though fans give so much to the game, it wasn't the end of the world as such, because of course the fact that it's a game that's played where you expect the fans to respect the players and not make any noise at all. But it still felt weird not seeing a single soul sat in the auditorium. But yeah, we all want to get back to a position where we can actually have fans there. I mean, what other sports are going on, do we think? Can you think of anything that's going on still, or do you think everything's been stopped right now?
Yeah, that's what makes the wrestling situation so extraordinary in the first place. There was NFL. Their season starting later on. They haven't actually cancelled it, but that's because they've got so many financial implications involved with that sport as well. But I read that only a week ago. I'm not really. That's your sport. That's another sport of your genre. So you may know more about that than me.
Well,
And
I've got a friend who likes NFL more than I do, but yeah, I'm more of an NBA guy in terms of American sports. Thing is, if they were able to finish the season off, which again, that's in question as well. their season doesn't kick off again until October, so they would have had a decent period to rest. But it's very debatable now how much of a rest they're going to get if they're going to have to delay the season as long as they have to. We don't know. In fact, I just heard Kevin Durant from the Brooklyn Nets has just got it. Sad for the guy because he's been playing for the Warriors for the last couple of years and he's been out injured for pretty much the whole season. And then he gets the coronavirus.
It's not his day.
It's just it's not his year. So you really feel for that for people like that. And I've heard a couple of players from the Lakers might also have got it as well. They haven't given any names yet. And I don't think it's LeBron James because I've heard that he's actually quite open and honest with his fans, and he would have told them if that was the case. He wouldn't just hidden it for the sake of it.
Like Leicester, some players, Brendan Rodgers reveals some players have it, but will not reveal who.
Absolutely, yeah. It was three players that have got it or at risk of it or something at Leicester, but we're not going to name them. I mean, it's not something that they've done wrong as such. I mean, unless you've done a Rudy Gobert and you basically just gone, I'm gonna mock this and I'm just gonna touch everything, and then all of a sudden he gets diagnosed with it. You've done nothing wrong, so it doesn't really. There's nothing wrong with sort of saying who it was, etc. But
we have the right to consent, though. I must say that I've got a dental background. You have to. Patients should have the right to consent. So it could be any Leicester player. If they want to consent that the information can be provided, so be it. If not, then not. Because at the end of the day, they're not going to even be access to any of us. Any Leicester player, we're not going to have Maddison, and Diddy, any of these players come into any of our homes anyway. So you could say yes, it's not really anyone's business anyway. So I think the media just loves to be nosy anyway in the first place. This is why we like this idea that we're not the media, we're just fans like other people watching this video, just want to discuss sports. And during this period where people want our advice to isolate as much as possible, it's nice to communicate with our brothers and sisters through technology.
Absolutely. I mean, the reason we've created this platform is you and I have always, we literally just talk about various subjects, mainly football, quite a lot. We were messaging each other quite a lot about these subjects, but we just thought, well, why not voice our opinions if somebody else has got a similar or differing opinion to what we have, because you do find that, pundits hold back somewhat, and you can still hold back and be respectful or be honest, but not swear or something like that. And we're trying to do that, of course, on here. I think there is a nice way of doing things like that, and pundits will either go one way or go too far, or they'll just sort of start flirting with potential, what I'm trying to say, but they don't actually say it. And you're thinking, you're left exasperated there as a fan, thinking, well, why aren't you just telling it as it is? What's wrong with you? That's exactly why you and I thought of doing this, and we're not obviously the first ones to have done it. I think that's how fan channels start, really, isn't it?
Guy Gary Neville. Your guy Gary Neville, he holds back a lot talking about recruitment at Man United.
Well, he doesn't hold back, does he? He doesn't.
No, he can say a lot more. He could say a lot more. That's what you're trying to elaborate.
He's actually very good at sort of firmly, with a serious face. He's not laughing because there's not a joking matter in his eyes. Quite firmly saying, we're not doing it right. He'll say like the recruitment, and he'll say the ownership. He doesn't. When you're that clever when you're clever with your words, you don't have to sort of start naming names. And that's the key. Whereas Jamie Carragher's actually improving a little bit, but I don't respect him after what he did. It's terribly, terribly unprofessional.
You can't defend what he did, but the other guy whilst driving was doing this. That's illegal.
True.
Oh, like this.
Oh no, but I mean, you and I both know that we can't condone idiotic behaviour. But the sad truth is, the second you're sort of a familiar face or a professional or a sporting professional or even just a well-known face, you've got a responsibility to yourself and indeed to your fans and to the public, to be respectful and to be professional where applicable, and he just sort of wasn't. Somebody's goaded him and he's basically fallen right into their trap.
And it was very friendly as well. The goading was friendly. They weren't saying anything really rude. They were just, it's a massive rivalry.
It was winding up, yeah, but he reacted. I mean, it's not the first time he's been wound up. He's probably heard it on a football pitch. Doesn't mean he runs up to Gary Neville and knocks his lights out or something like that. So it was unacceptable. But I mean, I'd like to think he's improved a little bit with his punditry skills. Maybe that's down to good old Gary. Sure. And you mentioned him, yeah, and got to say, got to really applaud. Probably should have mentioned this in the first topic we were discussing, of course, but we've got to really applaud him for making both his hotels, Hotel Football, which is next to, is Hotel Football, isn't it? I think it's Hotel Football. With Giggsby, yeah, which is next to Old Trafford, and the one in City Centre, I forgot the name of that one. He's made it either, I think, completely available and only available to medical staff, so that they can basically go stay there instead of going to potentially contaminated areas, like their own house, for example. It's a really classy move. I would suspect others have maybe been doing the same, but because like I just said, high-profile names, they get mentioned more.
Abramovich as well. Chelsea have done the same initiative for care workers, medical staff members, because care workers are probably another matter that has been as undervalued as others. I know one in particular, a strong football fan, sports championship team. He was telling me earlier that he went to Pret and he was told that he can get a 50% off his sandwich because he was off to work. And it was really, it really touched him really well that a lot of the people there were applauding him, saying thank you what you do for our community. Because before this whole virus infection has happened, not a lot of these medical staff members, in particularly nurses and care workers, are very undervalued. And during dental school, I worked with dental nurses, and you can see that not a lot of people would appreciate what they would do. And it's really unfair. They would actually in medical school teach you how to do a lot of your basics. And these people are very undervalued. And the one positive that's come out of this is how to value the health services like the NHS, these care workers, and etc. And one more point, maybe it supports your argument furthermore against Carragher. If he did it this year, that spitting thing would be a lot worse, because of it shows how bad his actions was in the first place. That spitting is a transmission.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it would just. I suspect he's lost a lot of fans and a lot of respect from a lot of people. It would have been just I thought it should have been the end of his career to begin with. I was amazed to see him back on the screen, but it definitely would have ended his career if he did it this year. I was going to say something else actually, and I forgot what it was.
If Carragher was to go, I think and the only side where I wouldn't want him to go, who could replace Carragher? Because Jamie Redknapp, I don't think I like him, but he's not leading. Carragher and Neville are just on another tier to every other pundit, because Sky Sports, unlike BT Sports and other genre, allows players of express their personalities a lot more. Maybe sponsorship issues causes certain pundits to hold back. Chris Sutton is probably the only exception where he just says whatever he wants whenever he wants. And Souness is another person who just loves to hate certain people. He probably blames coronavirus on Paul Pogba for some weird reason. We don't know, but nevertheless,
he has obviously basically sounded chauvinistic and quite sexist. I mean, I would rather listen to Alex Scott, who is absolutely fantastic as a pundit. I mean, you and our friend make fun of me for the fact that I actually really respect and watch the women's game a bit, especially the England team. But
Banter.
I know, I
Fans,
know. Well,
banter.
yeah, I
Banter.
know. We're friends. He just does it to wind me up. It's fine. It's only it can wind me up about it because I actually watch it. So, but she was an absolutely fantastic professional, brilliant footballer, and more importantly, she's just a really down to earth person. And a lot of what she says, it just makes complete sense. And it's to the point, and it's like Rachel Brown. Is it Rachel Brown? Rachel Brown Finnis, I think that's not her name. Well, former goalkeeper. Sorry, I've forgotten her name.
There's one of BT Sports who's very, very good on the equivalent to Gillette Soccer Saturday. She's really good on BT Sports.
I think she might. I think she might have actually gone on BT Sport. Yeah, I think something Brown Finnis. I think that's her married name now. It could be Rachel, but she's also very, very good. I'd rather listen to her than about how a good goalkeeping performance should be than a forward, for example, because it's her position. She'll understand how to get into the right sort of position, and we neglect that kind of thing. When we're watching football, we usually analyze the outfield players more, and it's easier to maybe spot certain things about what the outfield players are doing, but you don't really pay as much attention, nor does the camera, sadly, to the goalkeeper. So when you look at it really, really carefully, you can analyze the actual positioning of a particular player and things like that. Like, great example of this, actually, last season when United went to Wembley and played Spurs. When you look at, I think, Harry Kane's shot, it was almost identical to Rashford's, and in fact, Rashford's was actually a little bit further wide than his was, and pretty decent shot out wide. But because De Gea had positioned himself in such a way that he was more central and ready to go in either direction, he was able to put a strong hand out and save it. Whereas Lloris had, for Rashford's shot, had strayed a bit too far towards his near post, and he'd opened up more space, and he couldn't recover, and he couldn't actually move towards the ball fast enough on the other side. It's amazing what these pundits sort of provide that insight for. I mean, it's just and I just think it's absolutely fantastic. I think there should be more females in punditry. That's my personal opinion. I think they give.
David De Gea, that game was perhaps the greatest performance he's had, and that's saying a lot because he is a fantastic keeper.
11 saves.
That was probably, Unfortunately, it was a one-off for him because since the World Cup, he's just been a bit iffy. The Ronaldo free kick he had against Portugal, but it's a really good point you speak about even Alex Scott because. When Friday Night Football happened, I always like talking about this. The one reason why people are going against female punditry is because Rachel Riley, she was useless. They promoted her the girl from Countdown. That's what they called her. She maybe because Sky Sports didn't give her the opportunity to actually express her opinions. She was atrocious. They had Carragher, Neville, Jeff Sterling as the host as well, and her personality never had the opportunity. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is because then Alex Scott came, a retired professional footballer. There was a lot of pressure on her to step up, and she absolutely nailed it. She would describe every football point so well. Even Souness had to be quiet. I like Souness, but she was so well held. I like everyone.
He's so demeaning.
Most people. She could explain every predicament clearly, and she's so good. She is even the main host of Goals on Sunday. That speaks volumes. Goals on Sunday is a tradition for many people.
Yeah.
Her and Kamala, and she's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. But
I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think she's one of my favorites in recent times. I mean, I think the one name I mentioned to you, I just think is like possibly the greatest English female footballer I've ever seen, and she's a gifted player. she's almost probably retired. You almost, maybe 5 years too old. If she was in this generation of players, oh my goodness, that's Kelly Smith. I think for those of you that watching this and know who Kelly was, she was fantastic footballer. She just had the speed, the whereabout. She knew where she was. She had the great awareness, brilliant finishing, very clinical. I think she might still be England's top goal scorer as well. So there are players that could catch that, but I just think she's been fantastic. I think I'd like to see her in coaching and certainly in punditry. But if you're hearing this, Kelly, get out there. But
because we want to make, I think the initiative that needs to be considered. We always, Taz alluded to beforehand that we joke around about female football, but I think a very important factor is that we're in a society where now people are questioning that nothing is gender specific. Everyone's trying to be more open to going for different things, different sports and stuff like that. Football can be encouraged at even earlier age for not just for males, for females. You see in primary schools now, football is not just for boys now. It's a sport for girls and boys and play with more often. I think this is a thing that we can look into where everyone can play together, enjoy, and if people like, as Taz alluded to, Kelly Smith was able to be a coach, it will help the coaching system of training more elite female footballers from a young age and help society. And then it will truly strengthen the message that, okay, female football is not currently on the level of male football, but the reason why people talk about it is because we want people to have the opportunity to be able to do what they can and to reach their utmost potential. If you deny people that right, that chance, even like saying, okay, championship football is better than female football right now, but if you deny the opportunity for females currently playing and the young future fans to see that they can play, then how are we going to help people in the future to reach their opportunity? It's like Martin Luther King had a dream, and you want people to have the opportunity.
Absolutely. I think that's probably a very wonderful message to sort of end on as well. And if I quickly add before we finish, a number of years ago, I think England hosted the Euros. Was it 2005? I think it was 2003, and it was starting to grow again, or even grow properly at that time anyway. And they did pretty well, and they've had decent amount of success since then. The level it's at right now is still not there yet, but it's certainly heading in the right direction. Remind me where the Women's FA Cup final has been for the last few seasons.
Was it Villa?
Was that Wembley?
Oh yeah, sorry. Oh
yeah.
Yes, it was. Sorry.
And it's exactly where it should be. It's the pinnacle. It's the it's one of the biggest trophies in men's football, and it'll be one of the most important games of any ladies' season as well. So it's bang on. It's completely right that it's exactly where it needs to be, and that's at Wembley. It should be your dream match in your dream venue. Of course, playing at big stadiums like Old Trafford, like the Emirates, and things like that are amazing, of course, but it's not Wembley. Wembley's the ground you just can't really play in unless you're in a cup final or you play for the national side.
And
I think it just tells you how far it's come, the ladies' game, but it also tells you it's still in an upward curve, I'd like to think, and it's heading in the right direction. And I only hope that if we have this conversation in about 10 years' time, we'd be saying it with the England ladies team as World Cup champions or something like that. They have been very close the last two World Cups, making semi-finals, but who knows? So I think that's a really, really good point to sort of leave it for today. A really lovely message, I think, as well.
One more thing, guys.
It's going to ruin it.
We're talking about he has claimed that I'm the only big wrestling fan. Think about it, guys. Those Philadelphia fans of the ECW days. What is his name? Think about it. The Human Suplex Machine. Think about it. That's why he's got the nickname. Think about it, guys.
Okay, well, it's not just ECW, but I think WWE, and indeed, if you're a AEW fan, then you'd also see this person there because they're now a pundit. Sorry, pundit? They're not a commentator. Sorry. So yeah, that's your that's your clue. That's your sort of question for the day. Although it's a pretty easy question to answer, but yeah, we'll leave you with that. Sean, as ever, it's been a pleasure, buddy. And we will talk more about other stuff tomorrow.
I'll say tomorrow I really want to discuss. Never had an opportunity to talk about it. Me and this Human Suplex Machine discussed we would do it today, but we do it tomorrow. A player called Alessandro Favalli, who's described about his symptoms of having coronavirus. But we'll discuss this tomorrow. Okay.
All right. Great. See you in a bit. Bye, guys.